Hey everybody, it's Party Elite, and today we're continuing our beginner's guide to Crusader Kings 3, taking a look at the all-important topic of making money. Money makes the world go round, allowing you to do everything from raising armies to building buildings to convincing people to sleep with you. It also has many uses in the game. As such, obtaining money and obtaining it quickly is extremely important, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. Some dirty ways to make quick money, and some more fleshed out discussion about long-term financial planning. Before we dive in, I just want to mention, as we hit episode 10 of this series, if you've been enjoying the Beginner's Guide series and would like to join a community that's been sharing a lot of great Crusader Kings gaming, tips, and storytelling, you should check out the link to our Discord in the description down below, and maybe consider subscribing to the channel if you're among the 75% of viewers who hasn't yet subscribed to the channel. With that aside, let's dive in like Scrooge McDuck. Rob the temples. Quite often, your vassals and some court members will end up accumulating a fair bit of wealth. This is particularly true when talking about your realm priest if your faith is theocratic, and vassals who own temples if your faith has lay clergy instead. You can see just how rich these people are by selecting them and looking at their character details panel, just as you might with anybody else. When they've accumulated some money, if you want that money, there are a couple of ways to get it. With a theocratic faith, you'll first want to try and get your realm priest excommunicated or otherwise condemned. While this step isn't necessary, it helps avoid some of the pitfalls of this approach, particularly with the next step, which is to imprison the realm priest. There's a chance they'll avoid capture and run away instead, and if they haven't been excommunicated, you're going to suffer a tyranny penalty and a whole drop in your level of devotion when you do this. Keep in mind, this isn't just a reduction in piety, but an entire level of devotion. That is why, as I mentioned earlier, you might want to try for that excommunication or condemnation first. Once imprisoned, you can negotiate their release on the condition of them being banished from the realm. With no option but to accept, they will be forced to give you all of their money and leave your lands. With lay clergy, anybody can hold temple holdings, so rather than looking at your realm priest, you'll want to look at the people who have been given ownership of the temples. Since lay clergy treat temples as regular holdings, these people will often have heirs. Depending on their family situation, i.e. if they don't have any heirs of their own family, you might be the heir. If that's the case, and you are the heir to this person's temple holding, they become a viable target for this tactic. Imprison them and banish them for all of their wealth. And you get the temple as a part of your own domain afterwards too, which is something we'll touch on in a bit. Another easy way to use your faith to make some quick money is to simply ask for it. If your faith has a spiritual head of faith, you can ask them for money from time to time, and if they like you, you get paid. Less of a robbery, more like just asking for a favor, but nowhere near as fun as extortion of people and titles. Never underestimate the value of a good hook. The Golden Obligations perk is readily available, and it allows you to use a hook in exchange for money from the target. Weak hooks can only be used once, and then they're gone forever, but strong hooks can be used for this purpose once every 5 years. As a house head, you automatically gain weak hooks on everybody born into your family when you're the head. You can always fabricate hooks if you have the Truth is Relative perk, and you can try and find secrets that you can use to blackmail people for hooks as well. You can also gain hooks on people when you help push their claims through war, and another easy way to get hooks is by either abducting people, imprisoning them, or capturing them after a siege or battle, and then releasing them with a hook. Alternatively, you can ransom a target for a hook on their liege. Be mindful of who you chase hooks on for the purpose of golden obligations. When you demand payment in exchange for a hook, you are literally asking for the target's money. That means if they don't have enough money, you cannot use this action. From my understanding, there is a minimum threshold of 75 gold that your target must have, so it's a good idea to have hooks on landowners and lords and religious heads for the purposes of golden obligations. Further down the same tree, you'll find it is My Domain. This allows you to take the decision to extort your subjects once every 2 years. The game will randomly pick one of your vassals to target, and you can either harass them specifically for a sum of money at the cost of their opinion of you, Or you can extort everybody for a larger sum of money, though it hurts your opinion with all of your vassals in the form of tyranny. Or you can opt to backtrack on your decision at the cost of prestige. Even further down the same tree, you'll see at any cost. This allows you to take the decision to sell minor titles. It can only be done once every 5 years, and it costs prestige, giving money in exchange. But it can also have some questionable outcomes. You are literally giving minor titles out to the highest bidders, so you can expect some downsides. Targeted warfare. War costs money. Having your troops raised or needing to replenish their numbers after they've taken damage increases their maintenance cost, and this can become problematic over the course of a long war. This is why properly targeted warfare is essential, allowing you to either acquire wealth in preparation for war, acquire wealth during an ongoing war, or acquire wealth to recover more quickly after a war. War profiteer, fearful troops, prepared conscription are all helpful perks to consider, but there are a few things that bring bigger sums of gold at a time. With a tribal government, you can always send your troops raiding. The larger the raiding army, the more gold it can collect before it has to return home to drop it off. Now, since you pay upkeep for the raised raiding army, even though it's not as expensive as a regular warring army, you'll want to reach that maximum amount of loot and return home quicker to maximize your profits from raiding. To do so, you'll want to take a look at potential targets in the area and see how much loot they have. Remember that any holding type can be raided: castles, cities, temples. So check them all and look for the highest numbers. Not just the highest numbers individually, but the highest numbers in close proximity. Raid the lot, head back home, disband the army, and use the wealth to fund your glory. Loot is also an important number during regular warfare. When you win a siege, you obtain all the loot there is available at the besieged holding. So if you find yourself in desperate need of money in the middle of a war, or you're about to bring an end to a war, you can eke out some extra gold from your enemy by targeting the wealthiest of castle holdings to put under siege. Beyond loot, you should also consider high-value targets among people. There are certain characters that are likely to be worth a lot of money when it comes to ransom, for example. Heirs to the target, heirs to their vassals, important court members. With a left click on their portrait, the map will pan to their location. If you put that location under siege and win, you might capture this high-value target, and then you'll be able to ransom them for money, and they will sometimes net you a lot of money. And if not money, they might net you a very valuable hook instead, either on them or their liege. One final thing to consider is actually one of the first things to consider before you declare war. When declaring war, especially in the earlier eras, you can often only obtain a single county or a small parcel of land otherwise. There are many reasons to choose one target over another, and one of those reasons is potential financial gain. Since that's today's topic, let's focus on how that translates. The smallest parcel of land you can obtain through war is a county. Any one county has multiple holdings. Empty holdings have no value until you are able to build on them, of course, but any castle, city, or temple holdings are worth looking at. The tax from all holdings within a county, combined together, will give you an indication of the total value of the county in its current state. Taxes are impacted by a few factors, which we'll touch on in depth in a moment, but there are two things I'd like to highlight now. Control, at a county level, is a huge determining factor when it comes to how much tax each holding within the county provides. Conquest through war and sieges dramatically reduce control. This is why you might prefer to subjugate the existing holder into being your vassal rather than conquering the territory off of them. One has a lesser reduction in control than the other. When control is dropped, it will improve over time, but you can accelerate this by getting your marshal in there to improve control. Another factor worth highlighting is development. The higher the development in a county, the greater the tax its holdings produce. However, as development increases and crosses certain thresholds, further development happens more slowly. So, in a way, it's better to conquer a county that has high taxes despite a low current development, because that means you can relatively easily increase the tax levels as development naturally grows over time. You can also increase the rate of development in a county by using your steward in the appropriate task. It's also good to note that development increases at a different rate depending on the terrain type of the capital holding in the county. Farmland and oasis is ideal. Mountains, deserts, drylands can be problematic. So a county with holdings that provide high taxes, with potential for high development, and with pre-existing high control are ideal targets for conquest for financial gains. But enough talk of conquering. Let's talk about what happens after. Develop your domain. There are a few things you can do to ensure your domain has been developed in an ideal fashion. It is very important to remember that you get 100% of all the taxes and levies from your own domain, but only a portion of the taxes and levies from your vassals' holdings, based on their contribution percentage. Vassals will spend their own money to develop and build buildings in their own holdings, but you are able to guide them by investing in their holdings if you feel so inclined. After all, if they make more money, you make more money. But keep in mind that vassals will eventually provide diminishing returns the further down the chain they are. Your vassal gives you a percentage of what they get from their vassals, who only give a percentage of what they get from their vassals, who only give a percentage, and so on and so forth. And the next thing you know, the bottom tier vassals account for less than 1% of your income. You're making, using hypothetical numbers, 10% of 10% of 10% of a county's income. It all adds up, sure, but you should really prioritize your own domain first, since, again, you always get 100% of the benefit there. So the first order of business is to make sure your domain is optimal for making money. I won't touch on which buildings you should build. Looking through the building options, it's fairly easy to see what brings more money sooner versus later, and what brings more or less money in place of other benefits. It's just a matter of reading through the options. There are other things that are a little more obfuscated that I'd like to focus on in today's video. When giving territory to vassals, make sure to keep for yourself the holdings that have the highest potential for county development, and try to hold on to the entirety of a duchy if your domain limit allows. This is because the capital county of a duchy can build a special category of a building, the duchy building. These buildings impact all of the holdings across the duchy and can give massive boosts to income. Tax offices are great for this, while royal reserves are better for improving the rate of development in all the counties within the duchy, which in turn improves tax income, though it's more of a long-term investment. You can see what the capital county of a duchy is by selecting the duchy title one way or another and clicking here. You'll find the duchy buildings in their own separate spot over here, and as you can see, some of these are quite valuable. Pay close attention to the verbiage. You'll see that some of these buildings will affect, again, all holdings in the entire duchy. That is a very important distinction. So, with all that said, the financial value of your domain is determined by the number of holdings within your domain, the buildings in each holding, combined with the level of control and development of the counties that the holdings are a part of, and further impacted by any duchy buildings built in the duchy capital counties, with a final extra boost added by a steward set to collect taxes, who can, from time to time, also bring you an extra lump sum of money, though the main task is to put a percentage buff to how much tax you're collecting from your own domain. In some cases, special buildings that significantly boost income will be available too. Mining settlements, major sites of worship, etc., etc. You'll want to ensure that these special buildings are in holdings that are directly under your control. The same goes for special buildings that increase the rate of development. It's not a bad idea to move your realm capital to a county where such a building exists, or to an otherwise valuable county. Clicking on this button here with that ideal capital selected will do exactly that. And this ensures that the newly selected capital will be a part of what your primary heir gets on succession. That is a good way to make sure you retain 100% of the benefits between generations. Apart from moving a realm capital, You can also move county capitals within your counties to try and take advantage of better terrain at the county capital, which in turn helps with faster development. Remember as well that you should typically only ever hold castle holdings for yourself. Holding cities and temples will net you no taxes or levies since they aren't typically the right holding type for your character. The reason why I say typically is because there is an exception. If your faith has lay clergy, you can directly hold temple holdings as well as castle holdings. These temple holdings can actually make you a lot of money, especially when the right buildings have been fully upgraded, alongside a high development level in the county. So, don't hesitate to build more temple holdings and hang on to them for yourself. But remember, this is specifically for faiths with lay clergy, where you're allowed to hold temples yourself. And also keep in mind, these temples will count towards your domain limit. With that said, even without lay clergy, when you're theocratic, so the realm priest collects all of the taxes and only gives you a portion based on his opinion of you, you're still better off building churches rather than cities or castles, if you're focused on maximizing finances, that is. Cities have the advantage of being able to increase development rate, and castles will gain you access to bigger armies, but when it comes to money, churches are best, even if you don't have direct ownership. A city will only ever give a locked contribution of 20% of its income to you, since you can't hold cities directly, and a castle held by somebody else will give you 10%. But a realm priest will collect 100% and give you up to 50% of the taxes from all the churches in your realm, beyond your own domain, including the vassal churches of matching faith. The more the realm priest likes you, the higher the percentage, up to a maximum of 50%, and as things stand now, churches are the ideal holding type for indirect ownership that nets the most money. However, a realm priest that likes you will also give you 100% of the levies that come from all temple holdings. So as counterintuitive as it might seem, it's actually ideal to build levy-producing buildings in church holdings for the purposes of min-maxing military might, if that's what you're into. But with all the money in the world, you can just hire mercenaries and men-at-arms anyway. I hope this video has given you some insight into making money in Crusader Kings 3, not just in shady or questionable ways, but also as an honest-to-God lord of your realm. Money really does make the world go round in Crusader Kings, and it can often seem like a struggle to accumulate enough wealth to do anything major. The concepts discussed in this video should open some doors. Now, if you have any thoughts, opinions, ideas, or suggestions of your own, feel free to share them down below in the comments, and as always, don't hesitate to join the Discord, linked in the description down below, or to subscribe to the channel if you're interested in more Crusader Kings and strategy gaming content in general. As always, a massive thanks goes out to all of my channel members and patrons for supporting the channel on a monthly basis. Y'all keep us alive and running smoothly. And of course, a big old thanks goes out to each and every one of you for watching. Until next time, cheers.